Foxwood, and I'm the founder of the House of Bree, which is actually the first and only fairy seership institute in the history of the world, which I'm very proud of. I've written 4 books, 2 on folkloric and contemporary fairy tradition, 1 on southern folk magic, and 1 on traditional witchcraft. And I'm in the middle of writing another one, which is on the use of stones and crystals and mystical and magical work. That'll be called Stones of Sorcery, the Spectral Life of Gems and Minerals. And probably what I'm known most for is as a seer, as a pagan seer, and bringing back the old seership practices as they were preserved in Northern European fairy tradition.
Neat. Okay. And so in that, I like you to, can you tell us about your identity with the LGBTQ community? Like, do you have a label that you could use?
Sure. Well, I identify as a gay man, and I come from an earlier wave of the whole gay LGBTQ, etc. movement, when there was a lot more boxes, and there's less boxes now, which is fun to see happen. I'm an out gay man, and I was a leader in D.C. government, starting the first state or local funded substance abuse treatment system, whole system, for indigent inner city LGBT folks. I used to be an advisor. I was an advisor to 3 mayors for D.C. on LGBT substance use and behavioral health issues. And I won one year the Hero, LGBT Pride Hero Award, and this year I'll be on a interfaith panel talking about the role of power in the evolving culture of a sexual identity culture, and what we bring to the table, and power being the ability to affect change, how we're changing the world through how we live. I live as a gay man in a partnership with my beloved Sethlin, who I'm engaged to. And one of my joy of joys is to blow up soul cages where I find the things that restrict us, the things that trim our shape, that as I say, girdle our soul, and that blind our spirit from the magnificence of who we're to become. So I have a great commitment in our delicious queer community, because if queer is odd and queer is other and queer is non-conventional, I'm definitely about not sacrificing our souls on the altar of mediocrity.
That's fabulous. Well said. So can you tell us about your spiritual tradition and what you practice in that way?
Sure. Well, I grew up Christian. I'm a Southern Appalachian boy, so Southern and Appalachian. I grew up in Shenandoah Valley, and the culture that I grew up in was obviously Southern, having grown up in the slave trade area, and in fact, my mother was born on a place called Hollingsworth Place, which was an old plantation, and yes, she was born midwifed by a freed slave in a slave's quarters. So you can imagine how that affected my growing up, and how I think. I grew up around Southern folk magic, also known as conjure or root work. That formed a great deal of my folk Christian spirituality. So for us, Jesus and Christianity was very different than, say, Orthodox Christianity. I grew up with Jesus under every stone, Jesus in every green reed, Jesus in everything. And so, and working with the graveyard spirits and the crossroads and all the things that come with Southern folk magic, the second sight, the veil, and the spirit world was very alive in my life. But then I grew up finding that still the patriarchal religion I found oppressive, because it didn't answer something for me. And that is, if the Bible says we're made in God's image, God has a mother. And I wanted to know about God's mother, which drew me into modern witchcraft, and then later into traditional witchcraft, which I'm a mantle carrier for an old religionist line, carrying the lineage of my queen, Lady Circe out of Toledo, a fabulous, fabulous human being who really spoke of that no one is replaceable in this world. No one, and that, to quote Wayne Dyer, one of the great consciousness pioneers, don't die with your song unsung, don't die with your song under your tongue. And that's really guided everything that I am and everything I do and everything my witch queen did. And so I'm a traditionalist witch. I'm a fairy seer carrying the folkloric fairy tradition. And the reason I love it so much is it is about co-creative relationship with otherworldly beings for a restorative and integrative life and to bring humanity back into a sacred relationship with nature. The only way we can get there is you've got to lift our self-cursing first. We have to become whole before we can become holistic. And before we live in a co-creative relationship, we got to have communal life within us, where all the parts of us come together. So I'm a traditional switch, a fairy seer, and a southern root worker and conjure man. So that's what I do. Write about it, I teach it.
Okay, so do you do like talks and things like that? You run workshops at various events?
Yeah, I raise workshops at events. I have an apprenticeship institute, and I teach at 15 different groups around the country and teach some abroad. I'm doing a tour in September in Wales, the West Country of England, and Cornwall, teaching people how to access the living memory of the land of these ancient places, because there is remedial soul medicine in these places, connective energetic presence that can help heal us. My banner call is in healing the illusion of isolation, and then its 3 subsequent soul wounds: the desire to possess, resentment of change, and the desire for absolutes such as fundamentalism. So these practices that I do all serve for me one thing, and that is to help people become themselves, to help people enter into what I call self-possession. You know, we're possessed by every other image, and even willing to be possessed sometimes by every other spirit or every other divinity except the one that sits inside of us. And I like to think my job is to ignite the fires inside of folks, to burn off the girdle, to burn off the soul cage, and let their soul breathe, and let them become who they're to be. My spirit wife and I were once in contemplation on a plane. I'm on a plane a lot, you know. And I went into what I call the dancing floor of my soul. And I was there with her, and here's what came out of that particular interaction with her. You were born to paint the truth of your spirit onto the canvas of form, not to be trapped in another's painting. So my work is about untrapping people, unearthing that piece of spirit inside of everyone, right? And unearthing it, for the greatest, most valuable diamonds are often found in the deepest minds. So digging that piece out and liberating that piece. It's not until we find freedom to be, and we settle the civil war that rages inside of us, and free the slaves down hole in the hole of our soul, that we then become that wholeness, that healing touch that can then touch the rest of the world, the non-human world. See, as long as we're driven by just healing humanity, we're doomed to extinction, because over-specialization is the hallmark of extinction. And I think this work that Diversity is doing around diversity, around people busting out of the soul cages, and identifying not with a cookie cutter, not squeezing through shapes that retrofit them, but actually liberating the fabulosity that the source put inside of them. I ask my students all the time, I say, do you know you are source-centered in substance? Do you know that the source is incomplete without you becoming the piece of the source that you are? Do you know that you were born by intention, wonderment, and inspiration, not by need or desperation? You were born because an incomplete God said, I wonder what happens when I become you. I'll become something I've never been, and scratch an itch or answer a question about my creative potential I've never answered. But if people are retrofit, if people have to answer shapes that haunt them and that aren't them, then when do they ever become the piece of God, Goddess, all that is? That is their destiny. And if the bitterness and the shame and the sorrow of being retrofit and cut into false shapes sits inside of us, what can we heal for the rest of the world?
Well,
That's a bit of my philosophy.
It sounds like this next question you've kind of already said, but I just want to touch on it. And I always say, you know, a lot of third gendered people and people that question their sexuality and their gender and such, a lot of us have a hard time with spirituality because, well, we feel like we don't fit. But it sounds like you've applied your queerness into your spiritual path. Is it pretty accepting within your culture with like the people that you practice with? I don't know if you're part of a group with other people, I assume.
Well, I'm a part of an international group. The House of Bree has got hundreds of people and worldwide. And a part of the norm there is to co-create and become yourself, to unearth who you are. So my queerness, what I love about my queerness is it gave me permission to flip the birdie to convention. It gave me the permission to go ahead and say, by loving a man and living in an Appalachian and Southern culture, already gave me the permission to no-no, to do the no-no things. The permission to obey the spirit inside of me, as opposed to obey a spirit outside of me that's coming at me, right? So that permission really was the diving board. My queerness is the diving board to my authenticity. It is the diving board to that piece of art that I was born to become. So that norm, that feeling, that attitude is what fuels everything I do. So, and I'm not much of a follower. I'm definitely a leader. Not saying oppressively, but I like to ignite revolutions of consciousness, and I like to found places and opportunities for people to sort of let that explosion happen, let that convention explode off of them, and let them blossom into who they're to become. So all the groups I'm a part of, that is a part of the expectation, that's a part of the invitation and the support. I will not compromise my integrity and be a part of anything else but things that will allow that.
That are inclusive, which
Yep.
is exactly what we do at
Absolutely.
Diversity, is inclusive spirituality.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like you've already brought lots of other messages, but do you have like any one thing that you really want people, like a lot of the readers of Diversity are third gendered people, is there something you really want them to hear? Like as a seer, I imagine after all of your time and what you've done, that you may have a vision about something. Do you have any messages like that that need to be delivered?
I believe that we are not beings, but states of being. There's one great unified field of force, one great life web, one great ocean of being. Each of us are unique webs on that, or I'm sorry, unique waves on that great ocean. Whatever you do, reach inside yourself. Find that which brings you joy. Find that which inspires you to arise. Find that which ignites you into life. Don't let anything stop you. Find the place that you grow best with the people you grow best. Don't trim yourself down. Have the courage to go where you need to go, to grow where you need to grow. There are people who love you, and there are places where you can be. But whatever you do, don't die with yourself never being born in the first place. Be born.
Fantastic. And so in that, I know that you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I just want to speak it out loud. Now that sort of gay marriage has sort of happened, and I'm so happy. I've always been a supporter. And so now that that's happened, trans issues are emerging. Like, how do you feel about gender and gender expression and all this stuff is happening now? I'm sure it's not completely new to you, but there are some parts that I'm sure are very new to most people that are a little bit older sort of are like, whoa, what's going on here? So is there anything like, like that you see happening, that anything like that you want to talk about?
Well, I like being challenged. I mean, I was sitting in this affinity group just today, and that people were identifying the pronouns that they identify with. And I'm hearing whole new pronouns, he, him, was she, her, I think it was it them?
They, them, their.
They, them, their. And I was loving it. And what it was doing, it was making me go blah, 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 right? And I'm going, oh my God, there's all this new language. I better get my ass in gear and get caught up. I wasn't feeling like, oh no, this is terrible. This is not obedient to history or some silly thing like that. What I was really feeling was A, inspired, B, challenged, C, feeling like I can learn something. I was like, wow, there's this new revolution of fluidity, and where gender falls along a dial, like a radio dial, and you can dial yourself into the frequency. That's who you are at that moment, during that time, and that may change. So I was excited. The truth is, I'm very thrilled. I left the affinity group today, not just hopeful, intrigued. wanting to hear more about these pronouns, you know, wanting to know that, because language can liberate or it can enslave. And so I want to hear more of the liberative power that's come along. I want to get behind my trans folks. I want to get behind my intersex folks. I want to get behind my third gender folks and all the gorgeous languages we're using and words that we're using to describe these experiences. For a selfish reason. Not just for them, because I want to grow. Because I don't want to live in any soul cage. Because I want to live free. And I want to die free. And so I really just want to get behind my sisters and brothers and multiplicities of other genders, and I want to see through their eyes and see through their experience, and I want to get in there and do what I can to also leverage, because I have a massive network, and I have a lot of people who look at my work and who see me as an opinion leader of sorts in my work, and I want to be the right kind of leader, the leader that promotes awakening, and the leader that promotes, I guess, health and wholeness and coming into aliveness. I'm excited. Do I feel challenged? Yes! And when I'm challenged, that's when I feel most alive. Mm-hmm. When I feel conventional, I feel most bored. You know, and so thank you for ensuring that we're not going to get bored. And thank you. There was once I was watching RuPaul's Drag Race, and I love RuPaul. There should be a book of RuPaulology. RuPaul said, I quote, "We are all art waiting to happen." And so I think this is a permission to become that art, and I want to watch it. And who knows what pronouns I'm going to play with. I haven't played with anything but he, him. Maybe it's time for me to think out of the box.
Wow. Well, welcome to the club. A lot of us are exploring gender. So anyway, thank you. I want to just say thank you, and I appreciate you taking the time out to be with Diversity and let us have a moment of hearing from what other people have to say about it.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
honor. Many blessings. Thank you.